we like to do. Brooke and Kaya will be reading the daily word. I know I had to make like a very formal announcement. All right, it's Sunday, November 11, 2018, and the daily word of the day consists of freedom, which you need a lot more of. But we'll talk about that later. Okay, you can read this part.
I am free through the freedom of spirit.
The words of the prayer for protection were originally penned by James Dillett Freeman during the World War II years for those in the armed services. Today I use these words to bless all who serve and those who have returned to civilian life.
The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is.
I am grateful for all of those who have given of themselves that I might freely be able to make my choices in life. And I celebrate my freedom by valuing it and using it wisely, making decisions that bless others as well as me. The affirmation of the day is, you can repeat after me and Kaya. I am free through the freedom of spirit.
I am free through the freedom of spirit.
Yeah.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
You do that so well, we'll have to have you do it again.
Yeah, but
Another week.
she's my co-pilot.
Absolutely.
Can't do it without Kaya.
Absolutely. We pray for peace for all of them, and especially we pray for peace for those who make decisions about war. We pray for their guidance so they can think and act from their higher consciousness. Now, as always, if anyone has an individual prayer request, please write it down. It goes in our box there, and it gets sent up to Silent Unity, and it is prayed over for 30 days, 24/7. You can also call Silent Unity. The information is in the back of the bulletin. They are open 24/7. I'm a frequent caller, so they're lovely, lovely there. So if you'll join me in our blessing of our prayer request. God's all-encompassing love is doing its perfect work in and through us. Wholeness is established in every area of our lives, and so it is.
I've had a little bit of a cold this week, and I was wondering if I'd be able to sing. And she asked me if she could sing this week. It's a perfect timing.
I speak, all right? I speak for a living. I don't sing for a living. But this song, the original, has meant a lot to me, and I've changed the words around a lot over the years, and this is the most recent version that I've come up with. So join if you feel like it, if it rings, if you want. Everyone's welcome. But, oh Lord, won't you bring me some inner peace? My friends all seem happy, their lives are so good. My doubts all rise up, I'm so misunderstood. Oh Lord, won't you bring me inner peace? Oh Lord, won't you bring me self-compassion and love? I beat myself up daily, I just can't seem to care. So remind me I'm deserving of love and prayer. Oh Lord, won't you bring me self-compassion and love? Oh Lord, won't you soothe me with friends and family? I'm counting on you, Lord. I know you won't let me down. You brought me to these people, unity in town. Oh Lord, thanks for bringing me friends and family. Oh Lord, I thank you for my inner peace. Face to face love magnifies the moon. We are seeking a state of loving gratitude. Oh Lord, we thank you for our inner peace. And that's all. Channeling a little Janis Joplin these days. And now we come to our love offering, wanting to do something like this. And fate has it that here I am doing it today. And I thank you all for this moment. I really feel honored. So here we go. Several months ago, as the tulips were beginning to blossom and we were all so excited for spring, I had lunch with one of my very dear friends, Chris. And I knew that she was going through a tough time. I wanted an update. I wanted to be there for her. And when I asked Chris how things were going, she gave me one of those little half smiles and said, "Oh, Diana, right now, more than anything, I just need to change the channel." She sounded so tired, and my heart just went out to her. She was exhausted with worry and concern, fatigued, weary. She said, "Change the channel." And I took that to mean that Chris wanted to have an hour or so when she could focus on something other than that thing that was constantly on her mind. Call it a distraction, a respite, an avoidance, or just a moment of relief. She said, "Change the channel." It made me think of my friend Rachel. When we lived in Chapel Hill 10 years ago, Rachel and I were graduate students in the same history class, and I took an instant liking to her. She was just about my age, vivacious, passionate about her research and her ideas, and that we both had husbands gave us something in common from the younger single graduate students. There's a spot right there. Graduate school is not gentle on marriages, and Rachel and her husband split up. While she was in the midst of the divorce, we met for coffee, and I was primed to be her confidant, her rock, her shoulder. If she wanted to cry, I had tissues. If she wanted to ventilate and rage about her ex, I was ready with the, "Yeah, what an ass." If she wanted to strategize and plan her next chapter, I was ready with the creative insights and the wisdom. I was even ready to make her coffee Irish if a little Jack Daniels was called for. Turns out, I was her personal Mary Poppins. I was ready. Whatever she needed, I was ready to be that for her. And it turns out she wanted to talk about anything but her ruptured marriage. And I remember thinking to myself, why doesn't she want me to be her rock, her shoulder, her confidant? And then, instead of dipping into my Mary Poppins purse, I set aside my ego construct of what a good friend looks like. And I dipped into my heart so that I could be there for her in the ways that she needed, rather than the ways that I wanted to be. And though she didn't use the same words, she shared the same sentiment that Chris expressed so simply, so eloquently. She just needed to change the channel. And I got to thinking about this business of changing the channel. And I'm old enough, though really just barely, to remember the old knobs on the TVs, the ones for changing the channel, one for changing the channel and one for tuning in. And we had to get up from the couch, walk to the television and bend over and click the channel to get to the thing and then do the fine tuning so that it would come in properly. And I thought about Rachel and Chris and changing the channel and the satisfying click that the knob made, the way that I had to use a little pressure to make the knob move, to turn it so it would slide into the groove of the next number. I grew up in rural Oregon on the top of a hill, and our reception, TV reception, left much to be desired. We only got 2 TV stations, Channel 13 and Channel 8. Sometimes in the evening, if the sky was clear, PBS might come in just a little bit on Channel 7. At every channel and every number, I had the satisfaction of hearing that click, feeling the dial settle into the groove. Our babysitter got cable. We didn't get cable. And they got a lot more than the 2 channels that came in at my home. And they got the TV Guide magazine, the old one that came in print. My parents never got the TV Guide. We never had to flip through the channel to know what was on. We knew what was on without looking. There were only 2 channels. It's easy to remember the schedules. Like Chris and Rachel, there were only 2 channels. One full of fear and anxiety. The other, oneness in God, self, and others. These days, we can flip through dozens or even hundreds of channels with the ease of the remote control. We don't even have to change the channel to see what's on. We can push the button for the TV Guide and it shows up right on the screen. We can easily choose what we want when we need to change the channel. We can go from fear, terror, horror, to oneness in God, self, and others, All we have to do is change the channel. We can click that back button to return to oneness in God, self, and others every time we find ourselves on the wrong channel. Now, when we click the guide button to see what's on, the show that we're watching, the channel we're stuck on, it actually shrinks to a quarter of the television size. It sits up there in the corner. And we can scan the TV guide, going through hundreds of options in just a moment. All the while, we never miss a moment of that channel, the original channel, that incessant voice gnawing on our self-confidence, our self-love, our self-acceptance. You know the one that insists that you aren't enough. You're not pretty enough. You're not good enough. That one that never stops. It says you are not worthy of love, that everything is not going to be okay. Even when we're trying to change the channel, to have just a moment of respite during the despair, we still hear it in the corner. That unrelenting voice of negativity rooted in fear and insecurity. I thought that the key was to get out of that channel, the one that is repetitive, a rumination taken to an extreme. When your thinking is stuck in a rut. Stuck in a rut. A rut. What if it isn't about distracting the mind from the network of never-ending fear? After all, a channel is more than an electric circuit that acts as a path for a signal. It's also a groove, a tubular passage or a duct, like for liquid. As sure as gliding a finger into sand makes a channel, we create channels in our hearts and our minds with our vibrations. The mental channels we create are like sand. As a child, I remember that my twin brother and I would do this at the beach, dig channels in the sand. It was especially fun at the beach because if you dig deep enough, you go through the layers of dry and then wet sand. And our mental channels are the same way. They can be shallow and dry, easily erased or blown away, or filled and gone. The more energy we send to any particular channel, the more deeply we dig into it or dig it out, the deeper it gets. It becomes more and more fixed as we fixate upon it. And this isn't all bad, right? We can choose to fixate on the good or the positive over the sad and the fearful. And I thought after Chris said she wanted to change the channel, what if it isn't changing the channel as so much as changing our default channel? So that when we find ourselves ruminating over the if-onlys, if only I had not moved, if only I could write more each day, when we find ourselves wallowing in the pain, the despair that one day your love might not be enough, that one day you have to give up on the dream, when we find ourselves not daydreaming, but night sweating about the future what-ifs, what if I don't finish, what if I don't get there in time? When we find ourselves in a vicious cycle of painful ruminations, we can stop and consciously shift our focus to a different channel so that we might mentally and vibrationally create a deeper channel in which we spend our time, where we send our energies, where we send our vibrations. This can become our default channel because the channel becomes more fixed as we fixate upon it. Now, this is all just another way of talking about neural pathways. To create new neural pathways in our brains so that we can develop a new dominant way of thinking. Dig deep with the positive, create new default pathways. This isn't far-fetched, not in the slightest. It happens all the time, and not just with children. Granted, it's much easier for children. Adults aren't creating new pathways on virgin brains, a tabula rasa. We're creating pathways where pathways already exist. So we want to create a pathway that gains in dominance over the old pathways, the old ways of thinking, like a new freeway that becomes dominant over an old highway. And that isn't easy. And it can be done if one puts their mind to it, puts in the effort. The great jazz guitarist Pat Martino retrained his brain to play the guitar after most of his left temporal lobe had been removed in brain surgery. In fewer than 10 years, he was completely recovered and had regained his status as a virtuoso. Martino isn't unique. He's only famous. And, well, he's a virtuoso, so people talk about it. They pay attention to him. But new mothers create new neural pathways as they learn how to care for their newborn babies. New neural pathways is how we create new habits or break old ones. Spent some time sitting with this thought, thinking about it, talking about it, praying about it, writing it about it. And then I remembered my favorite poet, the great Khalil Gibran, who speaks of joy and sorrow. Your joy is your sorrow unmasked, and the self-same well from which your laughter rises was oftentimes filled with your tears. And how else can it be? How else can it be? Indeed, maybe it isn't a choice between one channel and another. The same self-well from which your laughter rises was oftentimes filled with your tears. Maybe it's not about the channel that you're in, because there's only one channel, but it's about what you put into the channel, fear or love. And if that's true, it's not about changing the channel, it's about changing what fills the channel. We don't need to create a new channel, which, let's face it, takes a lot of time. We don't need to focus on a different channel. There's only one channel, the channel that we've been vibrationally creating since birth, maybe before. The channel that has been carved by our emotions, our rage, our joy, our compassion, our self-loathing. Our emotions have dug deep. There's only one channel. We just have to remove the fear and despair out of the channel and then fill it up with hope and love. Unconditional love, self-acceptance and hope. And I want to make a radical suggestion, one that saves us a step. Let's just let the fear be. Let's just let it stay there. And instead of trying to shoo it away, let's let the love handle it. Because if we flood our one channel with love, then it will displace the fear. The love comes flooding in, ripping out the stronghold that fear has had. It blinds and consumes in all the good ways. We spend not one iota of energy or resources on trying to get out the fear, because that causes us to focus our energies on fear, which is the opposite of what we want. We do everything we can to pour our love into our one channel. Let's flood our one channel so full of love that it cannot be contained. It will spill over the edges of the channel, diluting and dissipating the fear until that's all that's there. All that remains is the love. If it isn't love, it's a call for love. I believe that there are two kinds of interactions. Those that are a call for love and those that are love. Every interaction is one or the other or both. When we greet our neighbors in a warm namaste, it's love on both sides of that interaction. A call for love might be the teenager, desperate for acceptance, as she starts smoking to impress the cool kids. That was me. The same teenager who gets caught smoking at school and whose parents are called in and they scream at her, or she screams at them, "I hate you, you just want to control me." Right? That's a call for love. A loud one. Now you know what I'm going to say next, right? The parents, they have a choice on how they want to respond to that call for love. Do they respond with another call for love, which is responding from their place of fear, yelling back, screaming about respect and not under my roof and something about lung cancer? Or they might respond to the call for love with love, engaging in a gentle, loving conversation about choices and friends and behaviors. Every interaction is a call for love, or both. I make a concerted effort to try to live like this. I think about it every day, all day, or at least when I'm in my higher consciousness and I remember to do it. And it's not always easy to spot, to recognize. And it used to be that when a student would send me a passive-aggressive, kind of snotty email, never you. I I wouldn't always recognize it for what it was. And my reply would be terse and cold, kind of professional, but without the warmth. Not love. I'm happy to report that these days, after years of practice, I get to love a lot more quickly than I used to, and I can see that this is a call for love. She isn't mad at me. It's not about me at all. The snotty email is an indication that she's hurting and scared. It's a call for love. I respond with love, a respectful, honest reply written from a place of compassion and love. And this part is getting a whole lot easier for me, though it's not yet effortless. It's the other part that's still a challenge, but I'm learning, and I keep learning. It's very much a daily practice, my daily love practice. When the guy at the restaurant where I get my lunch just sort of hands me a box of food with no bag, no utensils, no napkin, no graciousness whatsoever, I think he's ignorant, ill-mannered, poorly trained. I used to respond gruffly, impatiently pointing to and asking for the utensils and the napkins dripping with indignant self-righteousness. The call for love in this scenario was a lot harder for me to recognize. Again, after years of practice, I can finally spot it. In fact, I'm happy to report that over just the past few weeks, I've sort of had a breakthrough on this one. Now I can see it for what it is. I recognize that it is a call for love from me. My irritation, my impatience is the call for love. My self-righteous indignation is an indication that I'm feeling unworthy of graciousness, of respect, of love. Now I can recognize it for what it is, and I can respond to my own call for love with self-love. I think that the hardest calls to recognize are the ones that come from within. At least this is true from my experience, my observations. And the list is long, and the calls are loud. The need to be seen, the need to be the center of attention, the need to be right, the need to be apologized to, the need for respect, the need for acknowledgement, the need to be enough, the need to be seen. Oh, I said that one already. Someone needs to see it, needs to hear that one twice. These are all calls for love, self-love, and that's what it is, right? It's about self-acceptance, self-compassion, self-love. Once I can accept and love myself, I'm free to extend that to others, to love and accept others. So where do we learn how to do that? I didn't learn to do this from my parents, to accept myself, to be compassionate when I made mistakes, to love myself. One day, 3.5 years ago, I remember very clearly, it was Tuesday, May 12th, I woke up with 27 pounds of water weight. I thought it was an allergic reaction to something, and I was wrong. I was so very wrong. It was 3 months before I could get a solid diagnosis. And it was obvious from the very beginning that I had edema, which is water swelling in the body. What wasn't obvious was why, what was causing it. They tested my heart and brain, they drew blood, they peed in all kinds of cups. Tests kept coming back normal, except for protein in my urine. Everything else was normal. And I kept getting more and more edema. My body changed. I changed the way I walked. Instead of striding forward with purpose, I found myself taking slow, careful steps, uncertain, cautious about where I was headed because my body wasn't the body that I had any memory muscle for. I couldn't climb onto my bed anymore because the water was behind my knees. I couldn't bend them enough to climb. I had to sit and then twist and lift one leg at a time to get up on the bed. For the same reason I couldn't just simply walk up the stairs. I had to put both feet on each step, side to side, to accommodate the water behind my knees. I had so much fluid in my lungs that I had to sleep sitting up. Had I lain flat, I would have drowned from the inside. Because I slept sitting up, with my arms at my sides in the night, the water flowed down, filling my fingers, hands, and wrists. And when I first woke, my fingers were so swollen, I couldn't close it, couldn't come close to making a fist. I couldn't grasp the pan to cook eggs for my son's breakfast. I could no longer fit my water-bloated feet into shoes. It was summer, and I could wear sandals, though by the end of it, the Velcro straps of my sandals were barely touching. I kept gaining water weight. Soon, I'd have to go barefoot. I had 60 pounds of water weight by the time I was checked into the hospital. But you know what? Life didn't stop. I had a husband who helped was amazing throughout the entire process. Even so, I had people counting on me, and he couldn't help me with the growing sense that I was or was going to let them down. I had a 5-year-old little boy who needed his mama to be present for him and in his life. I had agreed to officiate a marriage ceremony. There was a beautiful couple counting on me to make their union official and legal. I was the primary organizer for an international conference that my husband, who is both my life partner and my intellectual co-conspirator, my husband and I were using to launch the world ecology paradigm. We had hundreds of people coming from all over the world to Binghamton. There had to be a conference for them to attend, and that was my job, and they were counting on me to do it. My memory that summer was spent on the couch. I napped and slept there, able to sleep sitting up or slouched in just the right pose that eased the discomfort. I worked there, accepting abstracts, organizing lodging and food, instructing my amazing team of graduate students, helping me with the conference. I gave hugs and kisses and directed the activities of our home from there. The couch time was punctuated with moments of grace. I did leave the house, though only when I had to. There were some people, but only a few, who could see that I was different, that I was going through something. These are the love that flowed to me, that filled me more surely than the water filled my fingers each morning. When I needed the love so desperately, I needed to know I was not crying to an empty room, my sobs echoing back to me with no response. I felt the love of casual acquaintances and friends who didn't know but cared enough to ask. The gestures, though they appeared simple and small to them, to me, they solved a problem that I couldn't, and they made it possible for me to continue fighting. The Reverend I barely knew, who loaned me vestments to wear while I officiated the wedding. By that time, the waterway was so great that I couldn't really fit into my clothes. I managed to squeeze into a pair of stretchy pants and a black jacket, but even so, my confidence was low. I didn't look the part. I didn't feel the part. Then you volunteered to loan me vestments. A simple solution. To him, to me, it was a booster shot to my confidence. I could look the part and gain some confidence. Thanks to you. There was the coffee guy. He always smiled and greeted me and everyone with grace and joy. He noticed that I was walking so slow and weary, weighted not only by the water, but also the frustration, anxiety, and despair. He asked if I was okay. I felt so invisible. Most folks aren't quick to make note of what appears to be weight gain, right? People think it's fat and it's considered rude to comment. The vast majority of people at the conference had never met me. They assumed that was how I normally looked and that I was just, that's what I looked like. But this guy, who did know me before and knew me after, he didn't even see the physical part of me. He saw the real me, neither fat nor skinny, just desperate for compassion. He saw me, and all he did was ask if I was okay. And it isn't really what they said, right? They simply asked if I was all right. It was the concern I heard in their voices, the compassion I saw in their eyes, the way they leaned into my pain, as if they could lift a bit of it off of my shoulders. I felt acceptance, compassion, and love from these near strangers, and it meant more to me than they will ever know. I was calling out for love as sure as a leopard cub calls for her mama. And they gave it without question, without hesitation, and without thought. Consciously or unconsciously, they helped me fill my channel with love. I felt tsunami-sized waves of love coming from my son and my husband. But it's their job to love me, right? They don't know any better. In so many ways, the genuine love from a near acquaintance or random stranger is so powerful, so meaningful, because it's not their job to love you, to love me. But of course, it is their job, just as it is yours and mine, to love one another. If it isn't love, it's a call for love. It is our job as spiritual beings to respond to all calls for love with love, even and especially when that call is internal. Where do we learn to do that? Where do we find the love that we need to fill our one channel? Where do we get it? One time, I think all wisdom comes from the feline species. One time, my husband was feeding our cat chicken, and Jason would pick a tiny piece of chicken off of the whole bird, which is up on the counter, reach out his hand to Spook, and she would rise up on her hind feet, you know, the way that cats do, and delicately take the food out of his hand, and then she'd look up at him for more. Now, Spook is a smart cat, and after 2 or 3 times, she stopped looking up to Jason for more chicken. And instead, she focused her gaze on the whole bird sitting up on the counter. She wanted to go to the source. And that's what we have to do. We go to the source of love. Mother, Father, Goddess, God, Creator, Divine One. Use the language that suits you. It is the source, and this is the source of love. It is the Creator who loves us. It is there, not from our parents, that we first felt unconditional love and absolute acceptance. You can feel it right now. God loves you unconditionally with absolute acceptance. You don't have to change. You don't have to improve. You are already perfect. You are as God created you, innocent and whole. All is forgiven. All is released. God loves you. And you, all of us. It is from there that we source love. It is the love flowing from the universe into our bodies, into our one channel that fills it and fills us. It turns out we don't need to change the channel or create new neural pathways. We simply need to channel God's love to fill our own channels. Namaste.